have a pencil, but I will call the meeting to order. I notice that all council members are present except for Isaac, who is on vacation. So it is 7:01 p.m. It is Tuesday, August 25th, and we are holding this meeting via Zoom. So I am calling to order the Common Council meeting of the City of Platteville for Tuesday, August 25th. We'll start with roll call, and I'm assuming that that's going to be Colette, but I can't really tell.
And I don't see Colette. So
What?
I don't see Colette.
I didn't think I saw her.
Well,
Is the meeting canceled?
Is the meeting canceled because Colette isn't here? I don't think so.
we'll make do. So I'll take it until hopefully she shows up. But we got to record it otherwise.
All right. Are you recording?
Yes.
Okay.
So we've got Doss.
Yes.
Arts.
Jason.
Hi, Sam.
Yeah, here. Jason, put your microphone on.
Here.
There you are. Clyde.
Okay.
Here.
Top.
Here.
Nichols.
Yes, here.
And Killian.
Here.
All right. And Isaac is
As
there.
I noted before, Isaac is on vacation this week, and he was going to try to connect, but that is not possible. So we'll go on with consideration of the consent calendar. The following items may be approved on a single motion and vote due to their routine nature. We have the council minutes from August 11th and August 18th. We have payment of bills. We have the room tax report. We have appointments to boards and commissions. And tonight I'm appointing Danica Larson to the Safe Routes Committee. We are pulling and deleting the licenses, 1-year and 2-year operator licenses. That is deleted from the consent agenda as it has not yet gone to the licensing committee. And then what will be the 5th item is the Grant County Highway construction aids for 2021. So my question is, are we ready with a motion on this, or are there other questions?
I have questions on 2 items, but I think you can take them underneath the whole motion.
Underneath what?
I have questions on 2 items, but you can just put everything under one motion.
Okay, so are you making a motion to approve the consent agenda except for item E, licenses? Ken?
No, my question is about the room tax, and my question is about the Grant County Highway construction aid.
Okay, what is your question about the room tax report?
Okay, room tax, I looked at that, and I was looking at the data from 2015 to 2019. There's an increase over 2014 and earlier years. What is the increase attributed to? The room tax went from about $80-some thousand up to 121 and 186. So my question is, what is it attributed to?
Yo, where's your hairline going, old man?
What's this?
Boomers!
Okay, we have 2 things going on. Me trying to unmute myself, and the other was somebody else who
Shut up, you little bitch.
we would rather not have unmuted.
Shut up, you cunt.
So anyway, just to explain on the sales tax report, I'm sorry, the room tax report. As far as the first increase that you referenced, which was, I think in 2015, I would have to look back at that and to understand where that increase came from or what caused that increase. But for the one that increased in 2018 from 17 to 18 was due to the opening of the Holiday Inn.
Well, there's a whole number of years where the room tax has increased. So I'm asking the question, why has the room tax gone up in general from 2014 to 2019? So there's a number of years in a row.
Ken?
Kathy, do you have the answer? You're on mute.
I can certainly weigh in. There were a significant number of events that helped drive the room tax up. People coming in. One of the little jumps was a basketball tournament at one point at the university. But I would say the most significant piece was the opening of the Holiday Inn. But a number of years ago, things really started ramping up in general. So it was just more events, more concentrated efforts to get visitors for overnight.
And this is Barb. Ken, I would also attribute some of that increase to the fact that we had construction projects in town and in the region. And many times when we have construction projects in town and in the region, we see people staying in our motels, which also is contributing to increased room taxes. Okay, and Ken, you had a question also on the Grant County Highway construction aids.
I have another question on room tax. It's for Kathy. Do you keep track of where the people are going as far as destination? You know, that question came up a few years ago. Is there any log kept or information kept on where people are going?
Not necessarily where they're going, but where they're coming from. There were several attempts for certain projects and certain events where we were able to tally with the help of the hotels the reason that people were coming. But it is documented of where they're coming from.
Okay. Okay, going to the Grant County, my question for Howard probably and the city manager, this amount of money has been at $2,000 for many, many years. Is there any way to increase this amount of money? We're getting $2,000 and we have to put an escrow of $2,000. Any way to increase that amount? Can we increase it to 50,000?
We would have to change state law.
Does the state law say you only get this small amount?
Yes. I imagine it was pretty good when the state law was enacted 100 years ago, but nobody's wanted to update it since.
So that's what it is.
It is
And
what it is.
well, it's not very much money, period.
Okay.
I wanted to ask a question on the room tax as well. The first quarter didn't seem so drastically different, but the second quarter is very different. And they assume it's the Chamber or Tourist Commission that will see that the most. Is that something we don't about till year end and COVID conversation or where there's some major budget impact? I'm just curious when we will address that.
So I didn't catch everything that you asked, Robin. I apologize. But essentially, yes, we see the impact on the room tax in the second quarter when the stay-at-home order was issued. It's beginning to pick back up a little bit now. As far as the impact, the city retains 30% of those room tax revenues, and 70% goes to the chamber. And so, yeah, that will be the way in which that impacts those two entities. So 30% impact to the city and 70% impact to the chamber.
Okay.
Okay, so do I hear a motion on the consent agenda with the exclusion of item E licenses?
I move to approve the consent calendar except for the item on licenses.
A
A second.
Okay, I heard Ken with the motion and Kathy with the second to approve items A, B, C, D, and F of the consent agenda. We'll vote. I can't tell if Colette is here yet.
I am here. Yes, sorry. Technical
All right,
difficulties. All right. Art?
Colette,
Art?
Yes.
Doss?
yes.
Killian?
Yes,
Klein?
Yes.
Nichols?
Yes.
And Cop?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, we'll move on to citizens' comments, observations, and petitions, if any. And I will call first on Eric Flesch, our museum director, who asked if he might say a few words.
Yes, hello, thank you. I wanted to say a few words about the upcoming no-show Miners Ball, which is on Saturday, September 5th at 4 p.m. Not only is this a great Platteville tradition that dates back to the 1930s, in which students would celebrate the conclusion of a rough semester with a great dinner and dancing, but now last year the Friends of the Museum revived the tradition as a something open for the whole community, very popular event that this year we won't be able to hold in person, but instead we've transitioned it to virtual space and made it fun as a raffle. So not only will it be the year's largest fundraiser for the museum, but each $50 ticket to the no-show Miners Ball this year will entitle the ticket holder to a single entry in a raffle to win the 1 in 10 chance of winning either great cash prizes or non-cash prizes. Top prize is $1,000 cash. Second prize, $100 cash. Third prize, $50 cash. And 19 non-cash prizes valued at $25 or more. So I'd like to invite all to support the museum through the contribution to $50 per ticket and a chance to win a $1,000 cash prize. As far as the virtual program goes, 4 o'clock on Saturday the 5th should be a lot of fun with a short video on the history of the ball and short history of the Friends bringing the ball back last year, and then a live program in which we do the raffle drawing and have some live music by Ken Killian's trio. So we'll invite you to tune in to Facebook Live, and you can purchase your tickets at the museum Tuesday through Saturday, 10 to 4, or from any member of the Miners Ball Committee. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Eric. And I would encourage everyone to buy your ticket. There's the ball was a lot of fun last year, and we'll miss that dancing and dining this year, but on to bigger and better and new things. Okay, thanks, Eric. And also in the audience tonight, I see Will Lesueur. Will, I don't know if you wanted to speak at this time, but I wanted to give a shout out and a thank you to you for working with Adam and others at the city to create our online survey for the community, and I trust and hope that that's going well. I have been getting messages from folks who say they've actually completed it, so that's great. So Will, is this a time you wanted to speak?
I was planning to speak a little later, around 8. I'm still getting some numbers together here, but I made a bunch of tables.
Okay.
At the moment, we have I think it's around 230 full responses. And it's going good so far. And I'm hoping as time rolls on, we can get a few more and I can make a complete report.
Great. Well, thank you for joining us tonight, and super thanks. I guess, I don't know what super thanks are, but super thanks. Kudos for helping us out with this. This is a time when we're all learning about new things and doing new things, and we certainly appreciate your collaboration and your assistance with this.
My pleasure.
It's a testament to how Platteville can work together. All right, that is all of the people I see in the audience. Adam, is there anyone in the council chambers that I'm missing?
There is not.
Well, good. Then I think we can proceed with our agenda. The next thing on our agenda are reports of boards and committees. We have the Public Transportation Committee. Robin, anything to add?
Nothing to add.
I do see buses out and about in town. In fact, I wondered if the routes had changed because it seems like I'm seeing them more than normal.
There were some route changes made, and it was to provide frequent routes so we could have fewer numbers on the bus. I did get a notice that one of the changes that we had made to maybe, I don't know if I can remember exactly the specifics, but to have 2 routes had to go back to 1 route because they were not able to find enough drivers due to concerns about driving during COVID. So,
okay.
Yeah.
So they're still looking for drivers, and that's good to know. So we'll spread that word. Thank you. And Airport Commission, Kathy.
Nothing further.
Nothing further. We did miss the annual pancake dinner. Sorry to say. Historic Preservation Commission, Ken.
No addition.
Okay. Community Safe Routes Committee, Jason.
Nothing to add.
One
Okay.
question on safe
Okay.
routes. Just a little question. It's on 5A4. And Howard, you can answer that. I assume this is some kind of flashing setup. RRFB. That's Staley. It's an
Yeah.
acronym.
You're right. It's an acronym. Rectangular rapid flashing beacon. They're the same things that are by the crosswalk at Olsvik Hall. Those it's a rectangular rapid flashing beacon is what it stands for. And we have them over at Olsvik Hall. We have them on Southwest Road by at Marquis Avenue. We have one over by the CFA, Center for the Arts.
Oh, will there be, it says be put closer to the bridge. Are you gonna have one on each side of the crosswalk or just one?
There will actually be 4 of them.
4.
There will be one facing in each direction at the crosswalk itself by Staley, and one set there, and then a whole nother set farther in each direction from Staley. And what this item means is that there was concern because of the bridge, the curve, and coming downhill into town. They wanted to make sure that the advanced flashing beacon was set far enough around the curve and up the hill so that it warns people. And what we were saying is that that the DOT agreed to push it 50 feet further up and around the curve so that it's more visible.
And these will operate all the time or just when a vehicle comes?
No, these are for pedestrian crossings. The little number 5 on the next page, it says that it's dual activation. It will use an infrared sensor to detect people who are attempting to cross, or if that doesn't work, there will be a push button,
Okay,
and it should only activate when there's a person trying to cross.
okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, that takes care of the reports in our packet. So I think we're ready to move on to the sixth item on our agenda, which is our action items for tonight. And the first of those is Resolution 20-2022, awarding the sale of $1.19 million in general obligation street improvement bonds, Series 2020B. And Nicola, I think we'll start with you.
Okay, thank you. So these are the bonds that we plan to issue for funding our street reconstruction in 2020. And the council had previously approved the issuance of these bonds, and today was the sale day for these bonds. We initially, the council had approved issuing bonds not to exceed a total cost of $1,190,000. We did very well on the sale this morning, and so I actually do not have to even borrow that amount of money. And I'm going to hand over to Dawn Gunderson-Shield from Ella's, our municipal advisor, who will explain more.
Thank you, Nicola. You were given 2 pieces of information. I think Nicola emailed it to you earlier. One of them is an updated resolution document for consideration this evening. As Nicola mentioned, we were able to reduce the amount of principal that you would be borrowing to finance your street improvement projects for 2020 from the $1,190,000 to $1,170,000. That resolution was prepared by Quarles and Brady after they obtained the results of today's sale and reduced the amount and then populated all the schedules. So when you take action, you'll be approving a dollar amount for this resolution of $1,170,000. The second document that was provided to you is entitled a sale day report. And in this report, we kind of recap the results of your sale and show you the new structure of that issue. So if you have that before you, on the second page of that document following the cover, we talk about the fact what the purpose in this was to finance street projects. You did have a rating discussion with S&P Global Ratings that took place prior to your taxable issue. They assigned a AA-, which is an affirmation of the rating that you've carried for several years. Great rating. It certainly impacts the interest rates that you receive. So this morning we did receive 5 bids, and BOK Financial Securities out of Milwaukee was the winning bid. And the winning bid is determined on what we refer to as the lowest cost of funds, and a TIC as was bid. So BOK had that lowest TIC. So you're borrowing these funds for 15 years. And we received a TIC of 1.1118%. That compared to our high bid, which was 1.497, was about a difference of $41,500. That's, again, we've talked about the benefit of doing this on a competitive basis, because every day in the market will be different, and getting that low bid can be quite favorable. So we did have term bonds on the issue, which means that groups of maturities were blocked together. So Bond Trust Services will serve as paying agent on the issue. We do have a call date within the issue, so that if opportunity presents itself, you can either prepay or refinance in the future. Mentioned that we dropped the size of the issue by 20,000. So to kind of run through the balance of this report, on page 3, we've listed the bidders that bid. BOK Financial out of Milwaukee was that low bid. Bankers Bank out of Madison came in a little higher. Baird out of Milwaukee followed them. And Northland Securities out of Minneapolis and Bernardi Securities out of Chicago. So that recaps the 5 bids that we received. On page 5 of this document, we've included on here, because our preliminary plannings for the year had both a taxable and a tax exempt issue. We've left the results of that taxable sale that we did earlier in July. And this schedule is the sizing sheet and kind of recaps the difference between our preliminary planning and our final. And the reason we were able to reduce the amount of the bonds is kind of twofold. Some of our issuance expenses came in lower than our planning estimates, as well as we had what we refer to as a premium bid. So underwriters are bidding a premium. They're giving you more cash up front in exchange for a couponing. That is primarily because of the pricing in the secondary market. So you have those dollars available, helps us reduce the size of the issue, and any portion that we cannot use for that purpose is deposited in your debt service fund to pay interest expense in the upcoming years. And I'll show you how the impact of that in a moment on the next schedule. So that kind of is how we've determined the ability to downsize by $20,000. And hopefully if you got this on big paper on a screen, the next page is readable, because I have it on a big schedule. So if it's shrunk down, I know the numbers will be little. But this kind of recaps all of your outstanding debt. We make some projections on equalized value. We've got the change in the equalized value rate, your total principal interest, less any offsetting revenues like TIF revenues that pay for debt service to a net levy amount. We've built in then the 2 issues that were done in 2020. The taxable issue that you issued in July is fully funded by your tax increment district number 7 or any support from guarantees on the developer. So that does not affect your levy. The issue that you issued today, however, does. So I think the key thing to point out here is towards the bottom of this schedule, we reduced the principal amount by $20,000. Our couponing, due to this premium, is a little higher than the numbers we showed on yield before. So the interest is a little higher, but the key point here is that premium allows funds available to pay interest expense. So the overall savings to the city is about $59,000 lower than our planning estimates. And you do have funds available to make interest payments for the next 3 years, which we had interest only. So for 3 years, this financing will not affect your levy at all, or very minimally. So that's a plus. As we talked today, as you work with your long-range planning, the structure for future debts can be beneficial in wrapping around the existing debt because of the zero impact of this issue for the next 3 years. We've also included in this document a copy of the rating report. We had provided that to you when we did the taxable sale in July. Again, it's a good report to read. This was prepared by S&P. It's really a credit report for the city and their credit quality. And the last schedule in this document is kind of a graphical illustration of where interest rates have been for the last 12 months. As you're well aware, there's been a lot of volatility during 2020, both in interest rates, stock market, and a lot of other things in the financial industry. And you can see that where we are today is slightly lower than the low that we've been for the last 12 months. Earlier, actually even just a little over a week ago, and that low was a historical low in the market. So that's why you're here today, being able to borrow for 15 years with an average cost of interest of 1.1%. So pleased with the results of the sale today, and if you have any questions on anything I've talked about, I'm happy to answer that.
Okay, Dawn, thank you very much. And we'll make a round robin. Jason, do you have questions of Dawn?
No questions at this time.
Robin, do you have questions?
I do not.
Kathy, do you have questions?
No, not at this time.
Ken, do you have questions? Ken Killian.
He's muted.
Ken, turn on your microphone. Okay, we'll move on from Ken. Eileen, do you have questions?
No, I don't have any questions. Just thank you, Dawn. Very good result.
Very good results. Amazing. Ken, back to you. Do you have any questions? You'd have to unmute your microphone.
I had it unmuted.
Oh, okay. Any questions?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
On page 3, it says redemption provisions. Now, are these provisions, are these mandatory or are these provisions that we can use at our discretion?
No, those are mandatory redemptions. The way the bid was put in is they combined the 2032 and the 2033 payments together. So the city will make those payments as the bond schedule has indicated, but they will be sold in the market as a block together, as well as the 34 and the 35, they've been blocked together. So what happens during those periods is there's a mandatory call that goes out, and the investors that are holding the 2032 maturities will have theirs called that year, even though they purchased them through 2033. There'll be a portion that'll be called, as well as in 2034. And that's why, since that's 15 years from now, having a paying agent take care of those mandatory redemption is a benefit to the city, because the last thing you want to have staff do is worry about doing those yourself. Does that help answer that question?
Okay. I might have. And then it says later on that we have a fiscal agent. Is this normal for every bond issue?
That fiscal agent is, when I say a paying agent, they're the ones that will handle those mandatory redemptions. And you do have fiscal agents on other issues that have held term bonds in the past.
And then the city keeps records as well?
The city makes the payments. The fiscal agent will contact the city when the payments are due. The payments will be made to the fiscal agent, who will turn them over to be distributed to the investors.
Underneath the section 12, it talks about bonds and bonds. I'd have to, it's a little confusing there as far as what is being referred to. Section 12, section 13.
Of the resolution?
I'm talking about the 6 pages that were sent out, the 7 pages sent out. It says any bond may be transferred by the registered owner thereof by surrender of the bond at the office of the fiscal agent.
Ken, I'll have to pull up the resolution. I don't have that in front of me right now, but if you'll give me a moment, I'll do that.
It's a little confusing what's being referred to as the bond.
The bond is the,
because sometimes it looks like they're talking about an individual bond issue. Sometimes it's the whole issue.
well, the whole issue is a bond issue, but each one of the years has its own bond maturity. So in 2024, there's a $70,000 bond, and the bonds typically are sold to investors in blocks of 5,000. So I think the terminology describes each of those bonds, the $5,000 blocks that are rolled up to 70,000 or 100,000 or whatever the annual payment would be, and then the overall issue is considered a bond issue. And there's bonds that make that up. So I think that's, again, confusing, but it's basically describing each of those.
And my last question is section 20, bond insurance. Will these the buyer
No,
ask for bond insurance or not?
they're not insured. We offer the underwriter the opportunity to purchase the insurance when we go out to the competitive market, so they can choose to purchase the insurance, which in your case, you have a strong rating. So there was the insurance companies didn't qualify it, and the underwriter didn't purchase it. When we see more likely to see insurance is if you have a rating more in the A category, and then the insurance company's rating is higher than that. So a lot of times the underwriter, they'll qualify for insurance, the underwriter will purchase it, and that gives them a little bit more security on the issue. It kind of raises the rating, but we don't have insurance on this issue.
My last question is the section I got, Exhibit E, form of bond. And does that apply here as well?
If
It
you
talks
look
about bonds maturing in certain years. We're gonna do that.
that's the form of the bond. There's for each one of those maturities.
Okay.
It's just an illustration of what the payment schedule is.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So at this point, if nobody else has questions, we can move forward with the action item.
I think I have the right one here. I move to adopt resolution 2022 awarding the sale of general obligation street improvement bonds series 2020 in the amount of $1,170.
7. Great. All right, thank you, Robin. I have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Ken's got
Okay,
it.
we have a second by Ken to adopt resolution 20-22 awarding the sale of $1.17 million in general obligation street improvement bond series 2020-2020B. Colette will vote.
Parts,
Yes.
Doss,
Yes.
Killian,
Yes.
Klein,
Yes.
Nichols,
Yes.
Cop,
Yes.
motion carries.
Great. Let's move forward with our next agenda item, which is resolution 20-23, City of Platteville face covering resolution. Adam?
Yeah, so during the August 11th Common Council meeting, city staff was directed to bring forward for the council consideration a resolution encouraging face covering utilization. So what you have in front of you is essentially resolution 20-23, which is strongly urging the wearing of face coverings in Platteville and requiring the use of face masks in municipal buildings. So city staff reviewed what has been considered or passed by other municipalities, and then we had the municipal attorney assist in drafting the attached resolution. The resolution designates the Grant County Health Department as the lead agency to respond to the public health emergency, and directs, obviously, me as the city manager to take all necessary and appropriate measures to prevent and respond. The resolution directs the city manager and staff to establish face covering requirements for city employees and other persons on municipal-owned properties or in any city-owned facility. This requirement would not apply to persons deemed under an exception with the Center for Disease Control and Prevention guidelines. It also would not apply if you are outside and able to social distance enough for 6 feet. The resolution then at the last part also urges every individual age 2 or older to wear a face covering in indoor spaces, outdoor areas, and when utilizing public transportation services. So if there aren't any questions, we'll obviously answer them, but otherwise the staff recommendation would be, based on the feedback we've had over a couple of meetings, would be to adopt resolution 20-23.
Okay.
Question.
Just a minute, Ken, I'll go around. Okay, Eileen first.
Adam, the only thing that struck me, and I'm not sure if this is common or not, but my recollection seemed to be that most people, most proclamations, ordinances were saying people 5 and older.
Mhm.
Is that your recollection too? Seemed unusual when I read it.
Yeah, 2 comes from the Center for, I've seen varying, they go back and forth. Some have 5, some have 2. So it just depends on, I've seen a majority have 5. Some have said the Center for Disease Control says 2. So this one was pulled directly from, I believe, Whitewater. So it certainly, if the council wishes, it certainly can be made to be 5 and older. I think just the CDC has made recommendations that as early as they can wear a mask, it's beneficial.
Understand. To me, 2 seems very young, but again, if it's all right with the rest of the council members, then that's all right.
But
Okay,
5 is
Ken.
listed another place.
Ken, do you have questions?
Well, 5 is listed in the ordinance we're writing up.
5 is listed in the ordinance that is included in the information and discussion versus 2, which is included here. Okay, do you have other questions, Ken?
I have one question, section 3.
Mhm.
And it pertains to the last 2 lines of section 3. Section 3 starts out, directs the city manager in conjunction with other city staff. But then it goes down and says, including but not limited to the following, when obtaining goods or services such as the receipt of dental service, medical treatment, or consuming food and drink.
Mhm.
That seems to be out of place.
So that is specifically talking about how we're, if you read the first part of it, it's directs the city manager in conjunction with their city staff as appropriate to establish face covering requirements for city employees or other persons on municipal owned properties. And that next section talks about how it shall not apply to persons under 2 years of age, persons who fall into the Center for Disease Control and Prevention guidelines. And that's strictly from the CDC's information. Where you are not required to wear a mask if you are obtaining goods or services as dental services or medical treatment or consuming food and drink. So as the city manager or staff, we cannot require individuals to wear masks if they're doing one of those things.
Yes, but then going out for, to talk about dental service and medical treatment or consuming food and drink, to me, it doesn't seem to fit.
So what that I think refers to is if you were in the municipal building and you technically had a granola bar, you can take your mask down and be eating that granola bar and then put it back up. So
I
that's
would also venture to think that municipal buildings could be used for free clinics or something. So maybe as an example where there would be dental services offered within a municipal building.
Yep.
Okay, Robin. Ken, did you have your question answered?
You've given me an answer. I don't particularly agree with it.
Okay. Robin, any questions?
No, I guess I would just speak to the 2-year-old versus the 5-year-old, given that I have a 4-year-old. I've spent time thinking about it, and I think that a 2 or 3-year-old can wear a mask, but mandating it is going to be a whole nother story because they might not always get it or cooperate. So I'm fine with the resolution stating 2 and the ordinance stating 5. I know we don't like things to be inconsistent and ambiguous, but I think that one makes sense.
Okay. Jason.
So if we end up passing the resolution piece, are we able to go back and make adjustments, say if the state mandate gets overturned or changed, or after it expires at the end, I believe at the end of September, can we revisit this and kind of assess where the situation's at that point?
Yeah.
Jason, I believe, Jason, that was the reason that we also have a draft ordinance in our information and discussion items tonight, so
Okay.
that in the event that there's some major change at the state level, that we have had some discussion and have some preparation. Adam, would you agree with that?
Yeah, so right now the resolution, if passed tonight, says it remains in effect for 60 days or until revoked by the city council. So if we are continued to be in a state of public health emergency, this resolution would continue until, just as you said, Jason, if there was something that, you know, the council deems that they want to tweak or they want to change, we then would bring this resolution back and can contemplate either changing the resolution, or if you want to go look at the potential ordinance route, that would be an option as well.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay, Kathy, any questions?
Just a couple things. I share the issue about the age of 2. I believe the state doesn't the state order, doesn't it call out the age of 5? I just think that because it's indoor outdoor space, it could a 2-year-old and a 3-year-old, I think parents would be really challenged with that. My other question is I think we initially talked this was going to go along with the state mandate, which expires the end of September. So if we adopt this, we're saying we're going to go a full 30 days beyond that, correct?
Fine. Yes.
Is there a reason we're doing that?
I think again, just
wondering if it
I believe the reason we're doing that is twofold. Number one, it gives us preparation, and as Adam has said, at any time the council can make a motion to retract or rescind that. But it gives us protection beyond. I think it also, I mean, I've been looking at graphs of what's been happening, and certainly there's evidence to suggest, data to suggest that wearing masks has led to there has been a decrease. And so I think perhaps that would be the secondary thing.
Okay, that's
Okay.
all.
So I've heard some idea about making a change from 2 to 5, and thanks to a couple people who have gone out and looked at the state mandate, you are correct. The state mandate does say 5. It doesn't say 2. And so if in fact we have a motion on resolution 2023 for the face coverings, I would suggest that whoever makes that resolution, makes the motion for that resolution, might want to indicate in that motion that they are recommending or making that motion with a change in age from 2 years old to 5 years old.
So I would move to approve resolution 2023, City of Papa face covering resolution with the change from the age of 2 years to 5 years.
Okay, I have a motion and a motion by Eileen and a second by Ken to adopt resolution 20-23, City of Platteville face covering resolution with one change, that being the age from 2 years old to 5 years old. Adam, got that? Okay. I guess then we're ready to vote. So Colette, that would be you.
Arts,
Yes.
Doss,
Yes.
Killian,
Yes.
Klein,
Yes.
Nichols,
Yes.
Cop,
Yes.
motion carries.
Okay, we'll move on to our next action item tonight, which is the inclusivity statement. So Adam,
Yeah, so obviously at the June 23rd, 2020 Common Council meeting, we started the process of kind of looking at our beginning inclusivity conversations with the goal of developing an inclusivity plan. And one of those continual conversations, or what we saw from looking at other municipalities, is one of the first things they did was looking at creating what many of them call an inclusivity or an equity kind of working statement. And this is something that the intention of this statement is to be kind of ever evolving and ever changing, that is reviewed kind of constantly by city staff and council members to give us an idea of when we're looking at, policies, procedures, ordinances, that we are ensuring that, we're reviewing them to be inclusive, and also, remembering, key things about trying to be a more welcoming and inclusive community. So we had a draft statement that was put out to the public to garner feedback. There's been some opportunity for staff to review it. There's been opportunity for the council to review it. So where we're at now is potentially there's kind of a couple of options. This has now been moved to an action item. So if the council wishes, they can adopt the current working statement that is in the packet. There also is the opportunity for changes to be made from feedback that you've either received since the last meeting. I believe Councilmember Cobb had sent kind of some thoughts that she wanted to see, which I sent out to all the council members to look at. So you have a couple of options. Either number one, you can approve this as it stands. You can, just like you did with the kind of resolution, if there are changes that council members would like to see, they can be made, and then that can be passed on consensus. If you feel that there is more kind of feedback you would like to put into this, it certainly can be tabled and brought back again as another action item at the next meeting. But what we're kind of looking at, based on the feedback staff got, was to bring this now as an action item to try to get some consensus, to have a physical working statement approved. And then staff and the council will continue to utilize this statement and work to make edits and changes as we continue down the inclusivity journey.
okay, so we've been reviewing this statement for 2 months. We'll start around robin here. Eileen, what are your thoughts? Did I put myself on mute or what?
Yes, you're on mute.
Thank you, Jan.
Did I, sometimes I get myself on mute.
After looking at this inclusivity statement, as you noted, for quite some time, and Kathy, I appreciate what you sent out as well, but what struck me about this one is the explanation that's in our packet. Because, sometimes we say City of Platteville and people think, well, the City of Platteville. But really what we're talking about is Adam has in his explanation is this statement will be utilized by staff, board, committee, and council members to provide a framework to continually review policies, ordinances, guidelines, and procedures to ensure they are responsive to race, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, ability, religion, and other individual identities. So I think this particular rendition that we have in front of us this evening, I think that's important to me because it says the City of Platteville is the staff, the board, the committee, the council members. That is who we're speaking to with this particular document. There are other ways of saying City of Platteville, but I think that maybe some people don't realize that this is for the government, so to speak, the governmental part, including individuals who volunteer on a government board or committee. So I'm comfortable with it. I think that there's been adequate time for people to review it. So I would be in favor of passing it this evening. And as has been noted, we certainly have the opportunity to add, delete in the future as other comments might come in.
Okay, Ken.
Okay, I'll go through my list. My first question is on line 1. How many goals does inclusivity have? Does it have 1, Could we say the goal of inclusivity is to remove barriers and eliminate social and economic disparities? Or should we say the goals are? I don't like the word work in there. I haven't liked that from the beginning. So either my suggestion is the goals of inclusivity are to remove barriers and eliminate social and economic disparities by focusing on and continue on. So that's my first one. Then next part is to go down to the second, third, the fourth paragraph that starts with the city of Platteville has a pivotal role in creating, and I would move that up to be the second paragraph. Because when you put it before we acknowledge that inclusivity, particularly racial inclusivity, you don't even have that mentioned yet when you put that in as the second paragraph. So I'm putting as the second paragraph the fourth one. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's the second paragraph. So then you go to the third one, which is now we acknowledge that inclusivity in commas, particularly racial inclusivity, which you've named in the previous paragraph, is essential to providing, my word here, instead of saying exceptional public services, I'd say equitable. Now you use the word equitable in the first paragraph, equitable outcomes, and in the last paragraph down the bottom of the page, you're also using the word equitable. So exceptional doesn't strike me as a good word to use. Then the next paragraph is now the number 4. The city recognizes that people of color and other groups of people, that is communities, and to me, that's been a misleading words since the beginning. I would rather you say, e.g., for example, some examples of groups of people instead of communities, because you can confuse that with communities around you here. So that's another one. So did you get those, Adam, as far as what I think?
Got them all, sir.
Okay, so Ken, what I heard was moving paragraph 4 to the placement of paragraph 2.
Right.
Replacing the word exceptional with equitable. And what was the third? Pardon?
Changing inclusivity in the first paragraph, having it be the goal of inclusivity is to aims to remove barriers and eliminate social and so changing
Well,
that.
actually, you have to say the goals are if you have an and.
Right.
So
No.
You can't say the goals is. You have to say the goals are. And if you have an and in the sentence, it makes it.
No, it goes, the goals are to remove, and
right.
remove is barriers and eliminate.
Right, are.
So it goes to remove.
Right.
So that's my question, is this one goal or 2 goals? And to me, it comes out more to be 1 goal. Go ahead, Barb.
Well, I think whenever you have an and in the sentence, it makes it, I would have to check diligently with somebody who has a degree in grammar, but my thought would be if you have an and in the sentence, it makes it a plural. So you would say goals are. Okay, well that's a grammar thing. That's not necessarily otherwise we can check on the grammar. Okay, Robin.
I'm comfortable with the comments that Ken made. I like them. Thank you for being very thoughtful and intentional. The only concept at this time that I'm kind of wondering if there's a place to put it in there is the cultural autonomy.
Pardon?
AUTONO, wait, autonomy.
Autonomy, okay.
So recognizing that cultural differences may somehow play into the way that we interpret or structure our rules and procedures, but that we might be looking to change the way those cultural differences exist. We just are creating rules that somehow exclude or push out or make the perception of those things as wrong, that we don't intend for them to be wrong. So I don't know that it has to go in the statement. I've been thinking about, like, if we do move to a commission that have a title, something like cultural diversity, inclusivity, and autonomy, as part of it, to be sure that we're looking at all of those concepts. But I wondered if that second sentence might somehow incorporate that. I just don't have the language there. So I'm okay with it coming in later.
Okay. Kathy?
Okay, the reason that I sent that information out is trying to maybe clear up a few points. And I've been talking to different groups, and part of the concern is that what it is in that third paragraph, it says the city recognizes that people of color and other groups of people. So it's highlighting people of color and everybody else is just, and so that's why in the information, I expanded on that so that there's more equality right off the bat. And I don't see in the initial fourth paragraph, nothing about age and being on the Commission on Aging. We just had a meeting and I don't see anything in this relative to the senior population. And then I have let's see, in the fifth paragraph, it says we acknowledge that without an intentional focus on inclusivity, we will continue to perpetuate and deepen inequities. We're making this statement on behalf of the city government, correct? So the question, and I had two different people ask me this, does the city, have there been times when this hasn't been followed, whether it was ADA regulations, whether it was through workforce hiring, whether it was appointments to boards or commissions, because it sounds like, almost sounds like an apology. Or an admission that we knowingly have done this. And my perspective of what I have seen with city government, now I know there's in the one paragraph we talk about both intentionally and unintentionally. I understand, and maybe this falls in the unintentionally, but that statement, that fifth paragraph makes it sound like that the city government is admitting that we have perpetuated and deepened those inequities somehow. And if we haven't done that, I think this message, we're off to a better start for developing this, because I don't know how, I had no answer when I was asked, well, what's going to be different? What hasn't the city done? I am not aware of anything. So those are my questions. And then the one final thing where we say equitable outcomes and just outcomes, I don't know how that is defined specifically, and wondering if the word opportunities would work for that, because our purpose is to provide just opportunities and equitable opportunities to everyone. By whose regulation is it an equitable outcome?
Okay.
That's all.
Thank you. Jason.
All right. In terms of the use of work, for me, I almost want to keep it at work instead of goal, because really, a lot of work in this area when it comes to diversity and inclusivity is ongoing work. Like, it doesn't end. There's there are goals, but it's always something that we're always going to have to be mindful of, and we're going to have to commit to working on and making a priority. So I kind of, in terms of work, I'm okay leaving that. Let's see. I'm wondering if we can add that statement above in that explanation paragraph where it says this statement will be utilized by staff, board, committee, council members to provide the framework to continually review policies, ordinances, guidelines, procedures. I like that statement because it's more of an action statement. And I think that the more action that we can put in here, the more that it's going to hold us accountable to making sure that we continue to do this work. So I'm wondering if we could add that statement somewhere in the working statement as well. Let's see. In terms of kind of the, again, more of a action that we're going to take, I think it would be nice to add something, in terms of, if something happens, how's that going to be addressed? If there's an issue, if there's an instance of, racism or discrimination or something, what are we going to do to act on that? What is going to be a policy and procedure in terms of addressing those? Let's see. And I think it's important that, especially with this statement, and just especially with kind of what the national dialogue is, and historically, specifically Black people in our country, I think it's important to emphasize people of color, along with other groups of community members as well. I just think that, in terms of the history and the experiences and, the ongoing problems that continue, especially for people of color or Black community members, I think it's important that we highlight that and give that a voice. I can see how maybe, it seems like it might be kind of excluding other groups. However, I think it's important, like I said, especially for our Black members of our community to be highlighted in this moment and continued. So we really continue that work as well. I'm trying to think of anything else. I think that's pretty much it in terms of feedback that I have right now. Oh, and the last one was maybe, I was kind of hoping that maybe some of the anti-racism statement feedback that had been submitted by some community members would have also been included in here in some sort.
Okay, Adam, I think I'm gonna go to you next as a reflection.
I think everything that everybody said has been great points. I think my recommendation would be, why don't we table this till the next meeting? Because I think what I would like to do is, now that we've kind of gotten to what I would like to say is the nitty gritty of the statement, I think there's some things where I will try to add in some of the feedback that we've heard and maybe tweak some of the things. And I think one of the things I'd also like to do too, I think as a recommendation is, I think this statement should be voted on by the entire council. So I think that Isaac isn't here tonight. I was kind of going to make that question or reflection, as I think as a city and as a council, you want this to be a unanimous vote. I don't think you want, I think you certainly could pass it, but I think just what I've heard from some of the feedback, I think there's some more tweaking we can do on this one. So that would be my recommendation is, why don't we let's table this till the next meeting, and I'll put in some of the changes and some of the options that have been discussed. And that way then everybody kind of is on the same playing field and seeing the new statement with some of the options.
So what I would take then at this point is a motion to table and to bring back at the September 8th meeting. Ken, are you making a motion?
Well, I could make a motion. I move that we table the item and bring back at a later meeting, the earliest being September 8th.
I'll second.
So we have a motion by Ken and a second by Kathy to table this so that Adam can incorporate items for tonight, and we'll see it again at a future meeting. Colette, we'll vote.
I have a comment before we vote, if I can.
Oh.
Sorry, but I don't know what it is that he has decided he will or won't incorporate in his changes, but I have to express some real concerns with Kathy's statement and comments. And I am concerned if all of those changes are addressed or incorporated that we aren't going, I mean, I don't know. I'm concerned unanimous consensus on this will be a challenge. I hear Kathy's concerns. I appreciated the statement put together in that it's effort, but I can't say that I support the suggestions for changes that she's made. So I want that to be known, I guess, before completely revamping it all. So.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Robin.
Yeah.
Okay, Colette will vote.
Okay, Art,
Yes.
Joss,
Yes.
Killian,
Yes.
Klein,
Yes.
Nichols,
Yes.
Cop.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries.
Okay, and I will say this. I'm sure that Adam will have this statement rewritten and incorporate things in the next week. So if you will look at it prior to the council meeting. Unfortunately, I didn't see any of I saw, thank you, Robin, for forwarding your information after the last council meeting. It's very difficult when we get information the day of a council meeting to reflect on it and to think about it. So I would anticipate that you will get this revised statement on the 1st of September or near to the 1st of September. And I would urge you to read it then, to think about it, and to call Adam with any ideas, suggestions, or comments at that point in time. Okay, let's move along to action item D, which is contract 6-20 sidewalk repairs. That would be you, Howard.
Yes, thank you. We have annual sidewalk repair contracts. We have a budget of $20,000. We split this into two parts. One is for sawing of trip hazards at joints. We have one bid by ASTI Sawing, and their bid was for $4,582.50. Our intention was to keep that bid under $5,000. We did so. The other portion of the bid would be for full replacement of individual squares of concrete. That was bid by Lowinger Brothers. Their bid was higher than anticipated. If we awarded both, we would be well over budget. So what we did was we're looking at reducing the number of full replacement of slabs and keeping that budget down to around $14,000 for this go around. So we're recommending that we award contract 6-20A to ASTI Sawing for their bid price and move toward 6-20 replacement up to a maximum of $14,000. And in your packet, I have the list of proposed sidewalk replacements and where we intended to reduce the numbers so that we could get within our budget amount.
Okay, folks, we have contract 6-20 sidewalk repairs, and we have Howard's explanation. Ken, questions?
No questions.
Kathy, questions?
No questions.
Eileen, questions?
No questions.
Robin?
No questions.
Jason?
No questions.
Okay, do I hear a motion? For side contract 6-20 sidewalk repair.
I move to approve contract 620 for sidewalk repair.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Eileen, second by Ken, to approve contract 6-20 for sidewalk repairs as proposed by Public Works. Colette will vote.
Okay, Arts,
Yes.
Doss,
Yes.
Killian,
Yes.
Klein,
Yes.
Nichols,
Yes.
Cop,
Yes.
motion carries.
Okay, that concludes the action items on our agenda tonight. So now we will move to information and discussion. The first of these is a ordinance that would be relative to the city of Platteville, which would require face coverings. So Adam, would you like to give us background as to why this is on the agenda, and then we'll move from there?
Yeah, certainly. So during the August 11th council meeting, city staff was directed to bring forward for discussion a draft city face covering ordinance. So city staff reviewed what has been considered or passed by other municipalities and worked with the municipal attorney to draft the attached ordinance. So under Chapter 5 in our municipal code is specifically dedicated towards health. So if this ordinance were to be created, it would create Chapter 5.06, requiring face coverings during the COVID-19 pandemic. It would be added to the municipal code, and the ordinance basically defines a face covering and what is a building area open to the public. It provides the requirement to wear a face covering indoors in certain areas and during city events. It provides a list of exceptions similar to what is on the CDC's website, where not wearing a face covering is acceptable. The ordinance then would provide clarification on how the Platteville Police Department would enforce such an ordinance. First, they would issue a warning for a first offense, and shall only issue a citation for first offense if individuals refuse to comply with the ordinance, or after receiving a warning, or for a second and subsequent offense. So some of the things to consider, obviously, with this ordinance is there is the potential for a budgetary impact, and that would mostly be related towards any type of legal challenge to the ordinance. You know, right now I did do some research before the meeting. There is a lawsuit that has been filed in regards to the governor's executive order. It's been filed by 3 residents, 2 in Polk County and 1 in St. Croix. So that obviously is something that is going to go through the process in regards to whether legally that executive order was able to be created. So again, what this would allow is, in the event that the governor's order would be overturned, this ordinance could be created as kind of a stopgap to you know, decrease the amount of confusion or uncertainty in regards to what you know, people should be following, or what regulations they would have. So right now, obviously, due to the governor's executive order being in effect, this ordinance does not need to be created, because his executive order would supersede any type of you know, ordinance that we would have, because his ordinance would be more restrictive. Again, some of the things just to consider is that if we were to go down this path, our attorney has advised us, he does feel that we do have the statutory authority under basically it's, I believe, chapter, if I get into the ordinance, it is section, I think 3 points, I'm gonna see specifically where it is. It is under the executive powers that the city has to declare an emergency, which I believe is 3.23. So we definitely do have the ability to create such an ordinance, which is in response to the pandemic. The only conversation I continue to have with kind of municipalities is, again, this is uncharted territory. So there really is not any type of legal clarification, or there have not been legal challenges to pandemics. So this is all new for everybody. But again, this is just something that was requested to be brought in front of the council kind of for information. So it's definitely out here for your review. And if you review it and have any questions, by all means, please let me know, or I'll try to answer any questions that you might have tonight.
Okay, so as indicated, this is on the agenda for information and discussion and basically review. This is the time that you should be reading this document thoroughly with a comprehensive look. This is not necessary at this time because of the other things that are in place. But if there are changes, we want to be ready if there's a need to be ready. And so we asked Adam and staff to draft this with that in mind. So we'll go around, and if you have any immediate questions, you may ask them. But again, this won't be on for action in the upcoming meeting, and we will continue to monitor what's going on in the state, both in terms of executive orders and in terms of data relative to the pandemic. So comments, questions, suggestions? Eileen?
No comments at this time.
Okay, comments, questions, or suggestions? Ken?
I have a couple are minor. Under 506.02A, a question. In the middle of that first paragraph A, it says whenever the person is in a building open to the public and is in an area of the building open to the public. So would you explain that? So in other words, if What, explain that one.
So they
You
define,
could go in the city hall and some is open to the public and some is not open to the public. But if they happen to get in a part that is not open to the public, how do you interpret that one?
Okay, Adam?
yep, that's a good question. So in the actual definitions, it talks about building areas open to the public, where it defines it as means any structure or premise licensed by the city of Platteville or used in whole or in part of resort, assemblage, lodging, trade, traffic, occupancy, or other use by the public. So in a lot of these ordinance, what they defined as if you're indoors in certain areas. So if you are I think the number one example I saw that was used was if you are a manufacturing company and you walk into what is considered their reception area, that area is defined as the building area open to the public. But then the minute you would go back into their manufacturing facility, that is not considered open to the public. So it would not fall into that distinction. So there's some areas where I agree, it gets a little convoluted as to what is considered open to the public and not open to the public.
Okay, I just have a little different wording on that.
Sure.
In a building open to the public and the person is in an area of that building open to the public.
Sure.
Okay.
And the other, yeah, I have a couple more here. These are, I call typos. Go down to 50603C and third line, have a medical disability that makes wearing a mask inappropriate.
Got it.
Disability is singular, so I think that changes make to makes.
Makes. Yep.
Next line 4, I think prevents them from, change for to from.
Okay.
And then this, under F here, this is one for the grammar people. Whenever federal, state, or local law otherwise prohibits, I would say the word should be prohibits.
Yep.
Because you put in an or in there, so you might be only talking about one.
Yep. Right, Ken, that was right grammatically, or makes it one. Okay, Kathy.
Get your expert.
Yep. Kathy?
No comments.
Robin?
No comments.
And Jason?
No comments.
Okay, again, this is on for information and discussion tonight. We won't see this on for action unless there's a need to take action on this at some point in time. So again, I urge you to read it thoroughly, to think about it, and to make contact with Adam with any questions so that if in the event we need to move this forward for action at some point in time, those questions have been vetted and any requisite changes have been included. So we'll now move to item B, which is the inclusivity update. And Adam, I'm going to turn it over to you and to do that. And I suspect you'll be calling on Will at this point in time, maybe.
Not quite. We're getting there, but
okay.
So basically what I just wanted to do is, as we've had, this has been something that's been on our agenda for kind of a continual basis. So what I put together was just some of the highlights again of the information that Robin received from some of the Platteville Black community recommendations for things that I think as a city, obviously we should consider, and particularly on the next part, number 2, where Council President Barb Doss is looking into what other municipalities have done in regards to creating inclusivity diversity task force. So I think definitely a lot of the recommendations or considerations that were made by the the Platteville Black community would be certain items that I think would be definitely geared towards this task force that they could review, which would be, you know, an anti-racism statement, again, looking into different kind of technology options or non-technology options and ways to get feedback. Again, reviewing how, you know, we should be considering our statutes and policies, the same thing we're doing with the document. You know, a potential kind of landing spot. We've talked about in various meetings how, you know, in the meetings I've had with the university about their bias committee, how potentially this task force could kind of be the first area to kind of review anything about incidents that could be deemed discriminatory or racist, et cetera. And then just again, kind of looking at ways, you know, some of the feedback we heard was about how creating meetings or subcommittees that don't necessarily follow some of the strict state statute requirements that are, you know, are specific committees do, as in the council very much has to follow Robert's Rules of Order and kind of follow those policies. Same thing with the Planning Commission. Some of the feedback we heard was, you know, could subcommittees potentially, if they were created out of the council, have that ability to be a little less structured in their formatting. So again, those are just some of the feedback points I wanted to kind of just emphasize again and ensure that we continue to think about. I don't know, Barb, if you wanted to kind of expand further, I know in some of the future meetings we're going to have, we're going to be talking about the concept of this task force and kind of moving on to that next step. I'm going to be meeting with the Southwest Rainbow Alliance again this week on talking about various staff development or training opportunities that are going to be available. And then again, as this overall idea of being a more inclusive community, we've been looking at doing dialogue sessions. We obviously had the one on August 19th with the museum that had about 20 attendants and talked about various things that the museum is doing in regards to programming and different ways that they can be inclusive. And then city staff, again, is going to start analyzing the next round of meetings, but obviously coming up with the city budget. That's going to be a kind of our priority here for the next 2 months. That's going to keep a lot of our time. So we may be looking at having to do future sessions that occur in 2021, but we'll continue to kind of look at those options. And then again, I just wanted to kind of open it up to kind of the council or anybody who wanted to discuss anything else in regards to this topic.
Okay, so yes, I have been interacting with some folks in not in the state of Wisconsin, actually, and some other states relative to some inclusivity and diversity task force work that they're doing. And I certainly would welcome anybody else to do similar research and pass along any nuggets of information that they glean. And if you have any specific kind of things that you'd like to have addressed, that too. But at this point in time, let's make maybe a round robin and see if people have input. Will, did you want to talk at this point in time about the survey or anything? Where did Will go? Will.
I'm happy to talk now. Adam, I was under the impression it'd be the working session.
Oh, is that right? Okay, that's fine.
But I'm happy to lend myself in general with this. I'm familiar with this from the university as well, so I'm here.
Okay, all right. Well, we'll call on you definitely then during the work session. Adam and I didn't get that. We didn't get that exchange made. So, Jason, any comments, updates, suggestions relative to this topic of inclusivity and updates?
I think specifically when we're looking at continuing to create the diversity task force or you know, whatever we end up calling that group, I think this would be a great time for us to really kind of figure out how we can take a step back from the table maybe. And I feel like this would be a great opportunity for our leaders of color in our community to really take this and have that opportunity to make it something that works for them. Kind of going off of that letter E under the first thing, the first statement there. I think, you know, being part of all of the community dialogue sessions. I think, we got some good feedback in terms of what some of our residents of color, specifically our Black residents, really want to see in the city, and what they want to see for themselves in terms of what we talked about, or how it was mentioned, that autonomy, where it's not held to the structures and the systems that are currently in place, that don't always work for everyone, and are not equitable at times. So I think for me, the formation of this task force and this committee is going to be a really important piece of this, where I think if we can involve our leaders of color in this city to be a part of that, and even just kind of, again, have an opportunity to make that their own, I think that's going to be really important.
Hey, Robin.
So something that I didn't say earlier that I think could still be brought up at this point was at the end of that inclusivity statement. I wonder if we can't go so far as to include the Commission of Task Force in putting there that there's an action statement kind of at the end saying that we will do it this way. And I thought if we're ready to commit, it would be really nice to see that in that statement. So that might include some reference to the bias incident team, but mostly to a diversity inclusivity, however we name it, task force. I guess a big thank you to staff. It's really nice to see this growing list each time that this is brought back to the council, and that it is a real testament that this is something that we're committed to continuing to do, not just a flash and then it's done. And I just have the thought going through my mind that we need to emphasize, reiterate that we don't tolerate diversity, we value it, and that we really do need to take action to support and encourage that. And so I just want to, I guess, express gratitude and continued support for that. That's about all I have.
All right, Kathy.
The only comment I want to make as far as the moving forward with the task force would be to have an in-depth conversation of who to invite into that. I definitely understand the Platte Mills Black community, but we have a number of Hispanics. We have a lot more diverse. And I would hope that the task force is created including all of them.
Okay. All right, Eileen.
Well, I would agree that going forward with the task force idea, I think we need a little more information to determine exactly what the purpose will be. I think we've gotten some different ideas from different folks even tonight. And so maybe again, if people want to write something to Adam and say, this is what I kind of have in mind, it kind of helps, as Barb noted earlier, to have that information ahead of time. So if you have other ideas, I would say send them to Adam and maybe he can collect them and send them out to us and we can discuss it a little more clearly.
Great. Ken. Ken.
Did you say my name? Okay.
Yep, I did.
Short comment with the news the last 2 days. My question is, why aren't we moving on what the police response is going to be in the city of Platteville to racial incidents? We had some information published early on, what is like 8 items. I'm thinking, is this going to come forward right away? Or are we just going to be not done until sometime in future soon, or what? So that's my question. How soon?
How soon will we form an inclusivity diversity task force? Or how soon will the police?
I'm not talking about the task force. I'm talking about police response. Police action.
Police response to the Kenosha incident?
In general.
Pardon?
In general.
In general.
Yes. Well, we've heard about a number of people being shot, so that and killed. So, what is the police response for the city of Pottsville? What are you going to call them? Doug, what do you call them?
Okay, Doug, you want to take up that?
I don't really understand what your question is, Ken. Our response to what specifically?
The purpose is to give to the public what your response would be to racial incidents.
Are you talking about a demonstration or?
No, I'm talking, what do you have?
I guess I'm missing the mark.
What do you have in your, what do you want? Code of conduct, whatever you want to call it, as far as treatment of people.
Doug,
policy of the.
Yes, the policy of the police department.
Yes, and I was starting to address that, and then I thought I was talking over somebody.
That was me, Doug, but go ahead.
Our policy requires that we don't engage in racial profiling or anything of that nature, Ken, so that we treat people equally and we deal with behaviors.
And so are you going to publish this to the public? What are you going to do?
I guess I can do that. I didn't know that that was something that there was a call to do. I had previously addressed, and it's ironic that Will Lashur's on tonight, but we talked about the 8 can't wait and things of that nature. I didn't know that we needed to progress further with moving forward with and publicizing other policies.
Well, it just seems like it's incomplete. I mean, we published this, you published something way back at the beginning. What was it, 8 steps to do? And now do those all go out to the public? What is the role, what is going to be the action of police? So that's my question. Are you going to publish?
And I guess we need to flesh that out a little bit more, what specifically you're looking for, Ken.
Well, I'm looking for what is going to be your mode, your action as far as when you encounter incidents. That's what I'm looking for.
Incidents by police officers or incidents by the public?
Right. How do the police treat people?
We treat people with courtesy and respect, Ken, and that is something that we've demanded since day one. That's irrelevant with regards to race.
Doug, I don't know if Ken has seen what you have published on your police webpage.
The 8 can't wait
Right.
campaign that came out.
Right. Might I suggest that you and Ken have a conversation and that you share that document with him and then flesh out what additional questions there might be?
I think that would be helpful because some of what Ken is getting at, I think, is covered in the 8 can't wait.
Right. I have read that and I suspect that's true. So why don't you make a hard copy of that, get it to Ken and have a discussion about that. And then maybe we can, if there are gaps or if there are additional questions, we can see that they're addressed. Okay?
Sounds good.
All right. Great. So that would be our,
Can I have a moment? I don't know if it's my turn. If
Is
we've
this-
gone around.
is this Robin? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm just one voice, and I think I'm kind of just speaking from individual gut reaction, not necessarily from a broader comment. But to Ken's comments and thinking about clear communication and my interpretation of it to Doug, I wonder if you might be able to speak to education or training that you've done with your staff in the past and what you have planned in the future. And then there's been a couple comments to the bias incident team, and if that might be, if you're ready to speak of that as a thing that's going forward, going to happen. I guess I was a little surprised in my time serving on the Police and Fire Commission that we weren't seeing any complaints coming through that were public concerns, because regardless of the atmosphere or the culture within your department that you're breeding, there may still be moments where the public doesn't feel that they were treated fairly or appropriately. And I imagine you get complaints, and I'm just wondering how that's seen by anyone outside of your department.
With regard to the complaints, we have a very clearly established process. It can be done formally, informally. People can reach out to you folks. They can reach out to the city manager. They can reach out to me directly. I mean, there's any number of ways they can get those complaints to us. And I guess I take it up as a source of pride that complaints against officers are very infrequent. So to say that we're not welcome into those, I don't know that that's the case.
I don't know, just my words, you're saying not welcoming to complaints. I wasn't saying that. I was just saying, is there a place where complaints are formally brought to a neutral review committee?
Yeah, so I can speak a little bit to that. So in the most recent 538 meeting that we just did, we did an article kind of specifically addressing that. Who can you talk to from the department? So in there, it kind of process. You know, you can talk to, not only can you talk to the chief, you can talk to myself. You can also, it also then listed all of the police and fire commission members and their contact information, and then also specifically addressed council members as well, saying, you know, you can always contact your council member with an issue, and just tried to put that information in there. So that was something we did, is, you know, continually trying to say, you know, if there are issues that aren't being reported, you know, we put in there the multiple steps, because just as you indicated, Robin, well, they may not want to talk to the chief, they may not want to talk to the administrator. So we tried to put in every, you know, potential contact option that they had, to try to, you know, provide some more education in who they can reach out to if there are incidents that are occurring.
Is it okay if I ask a question really quick?
Yeah.
Is that all right, Barb?
Yes.
Okay, just real quick. The one thing that I'm wondering is, you know, you've talked about, you know, ways people can submit concerns, but once that concern is submitted, what's the process after that? Like, how is that looked into? How is that, you know, addressed? Is it addressed only internally within the department, or is there, you know, a neutral body? You know, is that something that the Police and Fire Commission review in terms of any concerns brought forth by citizens?
Initially, typically what happens is that if it's a complaint, and I'm going to use this example, to the chief of police, it's something that I look into, because I'm going to have to report to the Police and Fire Commission and have them in their capacity as that citizen review board weigh in on an issue like this. They end up being the judge and jury when it comes to evaluating the merits of an investigation, or if an offense occurred, if it was substantiated, and if it involved conduct that was prohibited by policy or state law or federal law.
Is there any way that we could make that more like public in terms of that process? Just so like people are more aware of like, okay, when you do submit something, it doesn't just sit somewhere. This is the process. This is, you know, how things work. Is there a way that we could highlight that a little bit more for the public?
There's always ways that we can get information out to the public in a more prominent manner. I guess the article in the 53818 was an attempt to begin that. We do have the complaint packet and the process readily available on our website, and it's one of those things that we do try and share with the public, but you can always do more outreach.
Jason? Any other comments?
Nope, that's it for me. Thank you for answering those questions.
Okay, and I think that the questions tonight and the suggestions and the clarifications point to an item in this that we'll be discussing in the strategic plan as it relates to our communication and sharing our story stuff. So we would now move along to item C on information and discussion. This is the Community Resource Officer job description. I personally asked Adam to put this back on our agenda as we heard about this Community Resource Officer at our first community dialogue. What we heard was shared with the school district, and the school district has made some changes. I thought not everybody follows the school board and school district's actions, so I thought it would be a good idea to bring this back just so that you know what has happened. And Adam will give it over to you to talk about that.
I will give it over to Doug.
Oh, Doug, sorry.
I like a double intro. As you said, Barb, it was something that originally was discussed at the school board level back in November of 2019. I guess discussed and approved, and then it came before the Common Council in January. And again, the action that was taken at the council level was to authorize or approve the hiring of a 21st officer to backfill the officer or the vacancy created by the assignment of the community resource officer. Most recently, it became a point of discussion at the Police and Fire Commission Community Forum on July 7th. As a result of that, it ended up as a discussion topic on a couple school board meeting agendas, I think on the 22nd of July, and then again on the 12th. One of the outcomes was that at the first school board meeting, the superintendent was directed to come up with some potential revisions or additions or updates to the position description. Jim Babel looked that over and did do some updates to the job description. And to paraphrase what was done and his synopsis of it, he basically reprioritized some of the duties that are included in the position description in terms of putting them earlier in the document than what they appeared in the job description that I created for the community resource officer. In neither, or at neither of the school board meetings was the community resource officer position ever on the agenda for any further action. And it's now moved forward as per prior authorization by both community boards.
Okay. Comments, questions? We can make a quick round. Eileen?
No, thank you for the update.
Kathy?
No, just thanks for the update.
Ken?
You bet.
Yeah, when is this person going into this role? It says here, new role in August 2020. Is that?
Some of that is going to
now?
be dependent, as many things in this year, dependent on COVID-19. But we assume we're acting under the belief that the selected person, Officer Josh Stowe, will begin this role in the end of this month at a couple of the schools, and then segue into the other schools when they open as well.
Okay, my next question is, you talk about one person, hiring one person. Now you want that one person to go to the different schools?
That person, again, that we've identified, Officer Stowe, is going to be the point of contact. He's the one that's has already received school resource officer training, and that will be kind of the liaison and the day-to-day contact with the school district, the community in general, and also faculty, staff, parents, students. It's a role that all of our officers will be responsible for, but he'll be at the focal point of that.
So that's leading to my next question. What about if this main person takes vacation? This main person goes on family leave. Now, do you have certain people you're going to pick to go in to replace that officer, so there's always somebody there to fill the role, so that it's not just dependent on one person? So it'd be a number of people. You talk about training of this person. So will there be more than one person trained for this role? Are you going to be dependent only on one person?
Initially, the subject matter expert will be Officer Stowe, but it is very much an all hands on deck philosophy. If Officer Stowe is at his 2 weeks of military drill, then it's going to be incumbent on other officers to fill that void. And that's the expectation, and we have every confidence that that's how it will be handled.
So the other people will fill in for the vacation and the family leave and sickness and so forth.
Just as they always have prior to the creation of that role. We've always encouraged officers to go up and eat lunch at the schools, to do walkthroughs, and in addition to handling the normal everyday calls for service.
I am for the position. I've noticed that some places have eliminated the position, but I don't agree with that.
I appreciate that.
Okay, Robin, any questions, comments?
I feel like I should say more on this, but I don't think so tonight. I do have one specific question, and that is the discussion of a firearm. And I know I have heard your response a few times to some effect, Doug, of it being part of the uniform. There are times a firearm gets removed from the uniform. I don't know if there are other times for examples, but I work in a prison, and I don't believe officers wear a firearm if they come into the prison. So when is there an exception, and could the school or our department make an exception to the fact that he leaves his firearm in the squad car or in a locked location or something rather than on his person at all times?
You're right, there are exceptions to when an officer is armed, but those are typically, like you said, in a correctional setting, either jail or prison. And that's to keep basically the inmates from overpowering somebody and or taking possession of that weapon. That is not the intent of an officer being armed in the schools. I'm not aware of a CRO or a school resource officer anywhere in this country that is not armed on a day-to-day basis. So to have a in-school exception, that would be something that I would not be in favor of. It's a small facet of the job, but one of the important roles of that CRO or SRO is to be, and to put it in the vernacular, that good guy with a gun in the schools, to be that deterrent to an active shooter situation. Again, is it likely that that is going to be something that the officer is going to be involved in? Hopefully not, but it is something that is part of their role.
Thank you for your response. I will say I have some disagreements in a few aspects of that conversation and where we're trying to deter and where we may be creating increased likeliness of an active shooter, those sorts of pieces. But I think it's all kind of in theory, and can't honestly say that I know clearly which way I would like it to go. I just want to know if we're giving fair consideration of it being an option. So thanks for your response.
No, and one of the concessions or things that compromises is that the officer Stowe will be carrying that weapon, his sidearm, in a concealed manner. So it won't be visible to the public or students or faculty.
Okay. All right, thank you.
A question,
Jason.
does the person carry a taser, whatever you call it?
They would not have a taser on their person in the schools, just because you start to carry much more equipment. Now you're looking like you've got the utility belt that Batman has.
Okay, the next person I would call on is Jason.
Yeah, so I have to say that I've been kind of struggling with this topic recently. I was able to tune into the school board discussions about this, and first I'm hoping to get a little bit of clarification. I remember when we had this up for discussion and vote at the council, the way that I remember it being presented was that the funds that were available that we were getting were federal funds, and the stipulations around that were that they could be used for a community resource officer or for upgrading technology. And those were the only two things that you could do. And it was, and I think that the way that it was presented is that the resource officer had to be a police officer. But then in discussions at the school board, it came out saying that a community resource officer doesn't specifically have to be a law enforcement officer. It could be somebody else. And there's actually school districts across the country, some of them that have community resource officers that aren't law enforcement. So I guess, can you clarify that? Like, is it that specific in terms of the funding that we can only use it for that? Or, because again, kind of information that I was hearing at the school board meeting kind of contradicted some of the things that were explained to us initially.
And I was hopeful, and I thought that the superintendent did a good job of clarifying the uses of the community fund. I think it's a little bit of a misnomer to say it's money that we can use. It's money that the school district has at their disposal that can be used, and not, I don't believe technology upgrades, but safety or security upgrades, and or in this case, the hiring of a a community resource officer. And that's one of the nuances of this, that why the name changed and the focus of this. It went from a school resource officer to a community resource officer, so that this is somebody that will deliver services to students, homeschool, the people in the school district, seniors in our community, everybody. I mean, the gamut, the college students, everyone. That's the nuance where the difference between school and community resource officer comes in. I'm not aware of how other schools have done this in terms of hiring someone that is a non-sworn officer. I don't know if that is allowable use of the community fund, and that I would defer to the school district on, and Dimitri, the financial officer, is much better versed in allowable uses.
Is it federal funding, or is this coming from the taxpayer of Platteville money, like the school the property taxes that go to the school district?
And again, I'm going to defer to the school district on that. It is a community fund that is outside of the actual levy, and it's something that can be used for, in this case, a community resource.
Sorry about that.
I'm sorry, I didn't know if somebody was trying to make a point or what, but it can be used for a community resource officer or for school safety upgrades.
Just to, this may or may not help to clarify, but when the city passes a budget, the city levies tax dollars for city purposes. Other taxing jurisdictions pass their own budgets and they levy their own taxes. And so on your property tax bill, you have different taxing jurisdictions. Now, the city collects those funds for all the taxing jurisdictions, and then there's a settlement process, a distribution process for those funds. But the city doesn't pay the school any money from city levies. I just want to make sure that that's clear.
And Jason, I see that the fund identified as the Community Service Fund. I don't know how that fund is receives revenue. And again, as Doug has mentioned, Dimitri Andrews is the business manager at the Platteville Public Schools. And Dimitri would be the person who could tell you how and where the money for the Community Service Fund, where that money comes from. Just like we have a lot of different funds, TIF funds, whatever funds. I don't know where that money comes from. So I don't know if it's tax levy or if it's federal or if it's whatever it is. But it would be Dimitri that could tell you how that money gets into that fund.
Okay. And to the question of, does it specifically have to be a law enforcement officer? Is that part of the requirements of this fund, or can anyone speak on that?
And again, the allowable uses are for community resource officer and security upgrades at the schools. To say whether that has to be a sworn law enforcement officer, I can't go into that. One of the things that the school board did ask the superintendent to do was to look at other options, such as more school counselors and or social workers, to try and impact some of the same issues that a community resource officer might deal with. And the superintendent made it very clear to his board that, look, we already utilize those resources. The missing piece of this puzzle is involvement by the local law enforcement.
Okay. And is this just a 1-year appointment for right now, and then it's reviewed again?
It will be reviewed annually and evaluated, but there is a longer look trial period.
Okay. And is the $75,000 salary that was included in the public documents at the school board meeting, does that include the salary and benefits, or how does that $75,000 play out for this position?
It is wages and benefits.
Okay. And the last thing that I'm really going to push for this position, again, based on feedback we've gotten from the community and from other people, is, especially with a position like this, I think it's really critical that extensive training be a part of this. And I think, good quality training, specifically in the areas of anti-racism, diversity, what am I looking for? Mental health training. I think trauma-informed care, trauma-informed approaches are going to be really important in this position. So I think, really, if we can make that a priority and have that ongoing training, I think that's going to be huge. I know there's a lot of resources right here in town. The university has great trainings, in terms of those areas. But definitely the restorative justice, the trauma-informed care, and then the diversity and anti-racism training, I think, are going to be huge for this position. And I think that's all I have at this time.
No, we've
Okay.
already started that process with the National School Resource Officer training that Officer Stowe has attended. He's previously had trauma-informed training dealing with people in crisis, and we view that as very much staple training that all of our cops need, and we try and deliver that ongoing.
Okay, I think I made it around to everyone. So this was on our agenda simply as a closing the circle, come back since it was brought up at one of our community dialogue sessions. And I suggest that you continue to follow through with people and through the school district as to how this position develops through the year. The next information and discussion item on our agenda is the proposed code amendments for Chapter 22 of the zoning ordinance. And Joe,
Yes.
it's you. You're up.
Okay. So as we discussed previously, the staff has been working with the Plan Commission for quite a while to go over different amendments to the zoning ordinance. These came about for a variety of reasons, which I mentioned last time, so I won't go into that in any other detail, but we have agreed last time to just kind of dig in and go through, at least try to get through the initial districts, or at least your review is going to be through initial districts. We'll see how far we get based on the time. But if nobody has any objections, I'll just kind of start at the beginning and we'll go through and discuss the changes that are proposed. The document that was handed out shows the recommended changes. They're highlighted in the document, so it should be fairly easy to follow. So if that's all right, I'll just kind of jump in at the beginning and we'll see how far we can get. The first section in the ordinance where we have a change is 2203 site restrictions. And there's a change, item B, that really came from the housing study that was completed. There's some recommendations in that housing study that talked about, potential zoning amendments. And the paragraph or the item that I specifically zeroed on was a statement that says current zoning districts are too limited and should be made more flexible in order to avoid rezoning property for development or going through a plan unit development process. And I think it got to the point where they were saying that, you know, we should try to make it a little bit more streamlined for certain types of approvals. So this was the first item that kind of came up, where we have a section in the ordinance right now that basically says you can have one principal structure per lot. And so in the past, any development that had more than one principal structure per lot had to be approved as a plan unit development. So I thought of, you know, a situation where we could maybe streamline some of these housing developments. And the example that I would give is if somebody has a property where they're thinking of putting up a 4-unit apartment building, which requires commercial building code state plan approval, which adds time and expense to that project. If instead, if they could put in 2 duplexes, same number of units, but you would have 2 principal structures on the lot, it would be a lot easier for them to go through that type of approval, because it's not a state plan approval, it's not a commercial building code review, it's reviewed under a different code. If we did not have to approve that as a plan unit development, it would be an easier process for the developer to go through. So the change basically says that other than in the R1 and R2 districts, you can have multiple principal structures on the lot as long as it meets the setback requirements, parking requirements, fire access requirements, etc. So that's the gist of it, is try to eliminate some of those situations where the only reason we're acquiring a plan unit development is because it's multiple structures on a lot. So I avoided the R1 and R2 districts at this point because I think there are some situations where we have, you know, in the community, the existing residential areas, some of these large lots with a house on it, that I didn't want to get into the situation where somebody's trying to propose putting a house in the backyard of an existing lot. I think that should be reviewed in more detail. You know, it changes the neighborhood. There are some access issues. So I didn't want to go there. So it excludes the R1 and R2 districts, but the other areas would be open for consideration. So any questions on that proposed change?
Eileen, questions?
No question.
Kathy, questions? Ken, questions?
None.
Robin?
No.
Jason?
No questions.
Okay, let's move on, Joe. That one looks like we're okay with that.
Okay, 2204 use restrictions. There are a couple of changes where it basically would eliminate the option for fences that if they don't meet the code, they can go in for a conditional use permit. That's a little bit more cumbersome, so I'm taking that out, and if they don't want to meet the ordinance or they can't meet the ordinance, they just apply for a variance, which is more compatible or more consistent with the other parts of the code anyway. So I think that's a better fit. So that comes up on page 4 and page 5 is the same change. The other change under temporary uses, it's really kind of I think the way it's written now, it's kind of cumbersome. And I've never actually used this section since I've been here, but temporary uses, they talk about, it goes to the Board of Appeals after recommendation to the Plan Commission. That's just kind of an unusual process. We don't have that stepping from Plan Commission to the Board of Appeals in any other zoning approvals. So I'm basically just saying it would be treated as a conditional use. So we have a more defined process that's used elsewhere in the code. So it's a little bit more of a consistency change. is what I'm getting at with that one.
Okay,
Any questions on either of those?
Questions on either of these, the elimination of the conditional use permit, and you go the variance route, and in this case, the elimination of this unusual procedure that included the Plan Commission and the Board of Appeals, and instead goes the conditional, considered conditional uses and going to section 22.13. Eileen?
Nope, no questions.
Kathy?
No.
Ken?
No.
Robin?
No.
Jason?
No questions.
Okay, Joe?
Okay, 2205 zoning districts, D. Right now we have a process, I guess, in the ordinance that if there's a use that really doesn't quite fit the ordinance, but I don't feel comfortable calling it a specified use or something similar to a specified use, I can classify it as a unclassified compatible use and require it to be approved as a conditional use. With the state law changes that went into effect, basically we can't do that anymore. In order to be treated as a conditional use, it has to specifically be listed as a conditional use. So the law change really took away some of our flexibility, unfortunately, but that's the way it is. So this section, to be totally honest, we don't have a choice. We have to make that change. So that's what that's getting at. We can't be that generic or not specific. So that change is all about conforming to a state law. So since we don't have a choice, I'm assuming we won't have any questions on that one. 22051, the R1 district, fairly minor change. There was just a question, I think, at the Plan Commission about accessory structures, and so we just added gazebos, pergolas as kind of an example of the most common accessory structures in the R1 district. So it's just really for clarification. There's a change at the bottom of page 9 about the sale of produce and animal products grown on the premises as a hobby. That was an outcome of the ordinance change that we did last year about chapter 6, the animal ordinance. Specifically, I think it was related to somebody who might have chickens, for example, on their property, and they have excess eggs and they want to just sell them to a neighbor or something like that. The idea of this is that it's allowed as long as it's a hobby. It's not a business operation. So it's treated more like somebody has a garden and they have excess zucchini and they sell it on occasion. So that's what this was all getting, that change is proposing to address. I think that's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I did wonder if we were describing animal product or how we're defining a hobby. Did that come up, or I know in the ordinance there are some definitions sometimes, Joe, and I didn't see anything when I looked.
No, I didn't get into the changing the definition, but when I was researching that a little bit, there's guidance in the IRS rules actually regarding what's considered a hobby and what's considered a business. They're a little cumbersome, so I didn't include them in the ordinance, but I thought that would always be available if we needed to have further guidance on whether somebody's in compliance or not.
Okay, I was trying to think what an animal product was. I understand a chicken or some eggs. I just didn't know if it could go beyond that, so.
Yeah, well, it was directly addressed at the eggs why this came about. I assume there could be other situations, but that was really the intent of it.
So you can't act. Oh, sorry.
Unless you have a cow in your backyard and you're gonna sell milk, Eileen.
Well, I guess yeah, I know, I'm okay with that. I'm wondering about if you have something and you're slaughtering it in your backyard. I mean, that kind of crossed my mind. And so I just didn't know if we had defined animal products or a hobby.
No, I guess I think the key word there is as long as it's a hobby. In other words, so it doesn't reach the threshold of being a business, that it's a continuous kind of an operation that's going to be offensive to the neighborhood. If it's in hobby, to my mind, it's not ongoing. It's an occasional type of a situation. So
Okay.
I think it's going to have to be a judgment call if that ever comes up.
And Eileen, it does say grown on the premises.
Yeah.
I think the animal ordinance addresses being able, like that you may butcher a chicken if it's out of public sight and done without cruelty. So some of that's addressed under the animal ordinance. And I do recall the conversation and talking about IRS regulations kind of helping to define hobby. Like Joe was saying, I don't know if it would help if we said per IRS regulation, something in that we knew down the road someone wasn't just making a ambiguous decision on how to define hobby. But yeah, I think it is in fact legal to butcher your chicken in the backyard and sell it in that sense. Done discreetly and humanely.
Okay, Joe?
Okay, the next section are the dimensional requirements. And again, this came from the housing study where they have, basically it's a series of recommendations in there to address affordable housing issues. And obviously one of the easiest ways to address or to reduce the cost of housing is to reduce the amount of land that's required for a house. So basically I just, and this is consistent through the R1, R2, R3 districts, I just have a recommendation to reduce the minimum lot size required to build a house. So the numbers are fairly arbitrary, to be totally honest. I just dropped the lot width by 10 feet and the lot area by 2,000 square feet. And then I kind of did a consistent change also in the R2 and R3 districts. So, I mean, the numbers are somewhat arbitrary, but the intent was to follow the recommendation of the housing study. Any concerns about that? Comments?
Eileen?
No.
Ken?
No. No.
Kathy?
No.
Robin?
No.
Jason?
No.
Okay, Joe?
All right, so 22052 R2. And again, this first change, adding as a specified use, 0 lot line, 2-family dwellings. That was an item that was specifically mentioned in the housing study. And again, it goes back to the same kind of concept of providing the ability to reduce the amount of land required for a housing unit. And obviously, if you can have a duplex instead of a single family, there's some cost savings there. And the 0 lot line concept is that it allows a duplex structure to be owned by 2 different individuals, and they also own the land separately. Right now, the only place in Platteville we have that situation is there was a duplex out in the Fox Ridge subdivision off Southwest Road, where I think it was approved as a plan unit development, maybe, where it was kind of a special approval or a 0 lot line. But it is a fairly common situation in other communities. So that was a change, again, recommended from the housing study. Any questions on that?
Question? Eileen?
No.
Kathy?
No, you answered my question.
Ken?
No.
Robin?
I was just thinking about the subdivision on Main Street, the newer one. Is it I don't know, is it Pines in the name, out by Sunset? And do they have any townhouses with that 0 lot line?
No, that was actually approved as a condominium development. So each half of the duplex would be owned individually, but the lot would be zoned or owned in common under the condominium association rules.
Okay. Okay.
So I kind of one of the advantages of this type of change, I've heard from different people. I've never gone through the process myself, but there are some situations with financing, especially if you go to a secondary market refinancing, that the rules apparently are different for a condominium than for a normal non-condominium residential. So I've been told that a 0 lot line situation is a little bit easier to finance than a condominium. So also under 20 R2 205.2, there's some changes. They're really more just changing the terminology, try to get some consistency through the document in language that's a little bit more commonly used. So instead of rest homes, that's not used anywhere. Assisted living facilities is a term that's used in Wisconsin statutes for different areas. So it's trying to be more compatible with other codes. Home-based clinics was a clarification on clinics. So basically it's limiting the type of clinic that can be used in a residential district. The next page, instead of children's nursery and daycare, we change it to daycare childcare centers. And again, that's just a terminology change. Childcare daycare center is used in Wisconsin statutes regarding that type of facility. So we're trying to be consistent with other codes. And then a similar change regarding pergolas, gazebos, which we talked about before. The other changes are basically the same. Reduce the lot size, lot width, lot size. Again, I went down 10 feet in lot width, 2,000 square feet lot area. Trying to be consistent as I go through these districts. And again, the 0 lot line, it just had a, excuse me, a clarification that each unit shall have a minimum lot area of 5,000 square feet and a minimum lot width of 35 feet. So you don't have 1/2 of that duplex that's unusually small compared to the other half is what we're trying to get at in that situation. Any questions on any of those changes?
Eileen?
No.
Okay. We'll move on to R3.
Okay, so R3 is basically some of the similar changes. The 0 lot line dwellings were added again. Again, some of the basically the same terminology changes in the ordinance. We did take out drugstores, which was listed in there, that the Planning Commission really didn't see that as being appropriate use in the residential district, so we just eliminated that. Otherwise, I think the other changes again are the same, reducing lot width, lot area. The R3 is a little bit more complex as far as the lot or the dimensional requirements, because they have standards regarding square feet of a lot area per unit. But the concept was the same. I just did a reduction on each one of those requirements as a follow-up to the housing study to reduce the land area needed. Otherwise, those changes are basically what we had already talked about previously.
G7 has an extra E on the word child.
I just saw that. Thank you.
Okay.
22054 institutional district. So there was just a few, some of its wording, terminology changes. There were a couple of changes. Sanitariums, again, is like, that seems like an antiquated term under today's standards. Assisted living facilities instead of rest homes, etc. On page 16, it was, I think it's fairly minor, but leasing of parking lots or parking spaces for uses not associated with the property was previously listed as a conditional use. That's moved to a specified use. One of the properties that I thought of specifically regarding that change was St. Mary's School Church has some of their parking lots are technically on a separate block or separate property. So there is no other use on that property other than the parking. So technically they're kind of in violation of the ordinance as it's written, even though they're right across the street from the church or the school. So this basically just says that type of situation is allowed. It doesn't have to go through a conditional use permit. And it seems to me there was another of those types of situations that was present. I can't think of what it was offhand, but it just seemed to be more logical to me. Conservancy district, same type of situation. There was a conservancy district basically in the city of Platteville is our parks. So it didn't seem to make a lot of sense to me that park and recreation structures had to be a conditional use rather than a specified use, because that's what parks are for, is to have park shelters and so forth. So I moved it to specified use rather than a conditional use. I'm assuming we have no changes at this point or no comments. The B1 neighborhood business district, again, most of these changes I would say are terminology related. Under where it talks about residences attached to business establishments, this was really more for clarification of what the current rules are. So right now the code says that residences are allowed. It says residences subject to all provisions of the R2 district, but the R2 district basically allows duplexes, but it's not clear if it's allowed to have residential in combination with a business in the B1 neighborhood business district. So the housing study again talked about allowing more flexibility with mixed uses. So I thought it would be advantageous to clarify that you can not only have a duplex, but you can have a business with a residential above it, for example, that combination of uses. So that's what that change is getting at. There was some discussion at the Plan Commission level, comes out on page 19, about the distinction between convenience stores or convenience stores that have automotive fuel sales. So there was a desire to basically say if you just have, kind of those neighborhood grocery store type of a use, that would be a permitted use. But if you had fuel sales where, there's more traffic, more concern about the fuel, et cetera, that should be approved. So we classified that as a conditional use. And that type of change does come up later in the other districts. Everybody okay at this point? All right. B2 Central Business District, we start getting to more changes identified, at least as they're highlighted. But I don't know if you remember when I described this at the last meeting, there were the way the code is written now, it borrows from one district to the next. So the B2 says, well, those uses that are specified in the B1 are now specified in the B2. Conditional uses in the B1 are now conditional in the B2, but then they add other ones. So we got into the situation where there was some conflicts internally to the ordinance that some uses were identified as both specified and conditional. So I tried to eliminate some of those conflicts. I list all the uses rather than referring back to the previous district. So it brought up a lot of redundancy and some conflicts in the ordinance. So most of these changes are really trying to reduce that redundancy or conflict from what's specified or conditional. And also, again, some of the language changes to be consistent throughout the document. So rather than drugstores, we say pharmacies throughout. So that really covers most of those changes. The other thing is we tried to be consistent, again, in the B2, similar to the B1, that there are some uses that are permitted outright, but if they have a drive-through component, we classified those as a conditional use because there's some more concerns or potential issues that comes through with the drive-through. So we tried to make that distinction in the changes. I think that really covers most of that. Any questions on the B1?
Questions? Eileen?
No.
Ken?
No?
Kathy?
No.
Robin?
You kind of spoke to it, but the drive-through facilities, I see pharmacies, grocery stores, especially in the era of COVID, a lot more curbside kind of stuff. Is that somehow fall on the mercantile business piece, or grocery store? And yeah, I didn't get all the detail of why you said there was a distinction, but
yeah, it was just I think the previous code was a little bit inconsistency on as far as the drive-through businesses with a drive-through, that whether it was specified or conditional. So we tried to I think make the distinction that uses without a drive-through are specified if they have a drive-through component, that they would be reviewed as a conditional use. This was all done pre-COVID, so the thinking may have been a little different, but a temporary situation where you have a curbside pickup to me wouldn't apply as a drive-through. That's kind of a temporary arrangement. This would be, the obvious, the bank drive-through, the restaurant drive-through, where it's a structure, it's a layout that's intended to be that drive-through component on a permanent basis. So we don't have a lot of that in the B2 district, but we do have a couple of bank drive-throughs that would be an example.
Okay, Jason?
No questions.
Okay. Joe, I think we can go on. We should be, okay?
Central Business District transition. I think to save time, I think these changes are really following the same train of thought, terminology changes, redundancy changes. There were a couple of changes that I think were just eliminating use that didn't make sense. A penal and correctional institution in the CBT district didn't really seem to fit the intent of that ordinance, so we took that out. I think all the rest of them are pretty straightforward and consistent with what I talked about. B3, I think that's really the same kind of a thinking. We did move a couple items that were conditional to specified, and again, I think that was mostly to eliminate the redundancy because they were classified double. So we kind of, when we went through the planning commission, or at least I made a recommendation to one I thought fit better if it was specified. If anybody has any issues with those, we can talk about them, but they seem pretty straightforward or compatible to uses that are already in the B3 district. So if they're already there without any issues, I put it as a specified use. Nothing else that stands out to me as being a major change. You know, same with the M1, it's the same kind of a modification. Well, I guess I could clarify that for some reason the leasing of parking lots or parking spaces for use is not associated with the property. In other words, if you have an extra parking space in your property, the way it was written before, most of these districts, you couldn't lease that space to somebody else that had, you know, was on the adjoining property, for example, that needed additional parking. And I think my thinking was, you know, it's a vehicle that's parked there. Does it really make much of a difference whether that vehicle goes with that business or the business on the lot next door? It's still a car parked there. So why should we require somebody to go through a bunch of hoops to allow that parking space to be readily used? So I tried to be consistently moving that type of a situation to a specified use. I couldn't think of a good reason not to, but if anybody has any issues with that, I guess we can talk about that. But I did that on several of these districts. And really that gets us through the M4 district are all the same type of changes. So I think that's where we agreed we would get through or try to get through this evening. So any concerns or comments on any of these changes?
Okay, Eileen, concerns, comments on any changes up through and now? Next time we'll be able to start with home occupations. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Eileen?
I don't think so. I'm going to go back and look a little bit about the parking, Joe, and when you can and can't park. I'm thinking, you know, I want a large house or a house that has a large lot close to the university. I'm just wondering, does that mean I could just start renting out parking spaces on that lot?
No, actually, we did not make that change in the R1 and R2 district. It was basically in the commercial districts and manufacturing districts.
Okay. All right. That answers my question.
Okay, Ken, any questions?
No questions now.
Kathy?
No questions.
Robin?
No question.
Jason?
No questions.
Okay. Joe, next time, will we finish it or will we do a third of what's left? Or is it mostly all home occupations left?
The two big sections left are the home occupations and the conditional use permits. The conditional use permit looks kind of intimidating when you see all the red ink, but most of those changes are really dictated by state law changes, so we really don't have a whole lot of choice in that matter. So I think most of the discussion will probably be on the home occupations. Okay. And I would give you something to think about before the next meeting. Isaac kind of raised a question at the last time about basically business vehicles parked on a residential property. And I happen to be, since I was thinking about it, I've been paying attention to that situation the last couple of weeks, and it's something that is actually very common in Platteville. I see it all the time. For example, it seems to be real common for contractors, Ingersoll Plumbing, Bill's Plumbing and Heating, Schmidt Electric, those type of businesses where, I mean, I know they have a business location in the city. That's where they conduct their business, but their employees drive a commercial vehicle and they take it home with them at night and they park it there and then they leave for work in the morning. So that kind of raises a question about, it's that slippery slope of where do we say that's a business use of a residential property and when is it permitted? So I would just ask you to kind of give that some thought before next time when we go through the home occupations on how we want to address that type of a situation, because it is very common already.
Thank you, and people have their homework for next time in terms of the zoning proposed code amendments. That ends our information and discussion items, and now it's only 9:45. Adam, when we can have our work session start.
Don't worry, it's not going to be too long because time we'll give you some homework. And
your voice is gone.
My voice is gone.
Barb, did you go off a speakerphone?
Not on speakerphone.
You have a new
You got a
voice.
lot quieter.
Maybe I just changed where I'm at. Not on speakerphone though.
Oh, okay. So I see Will is there, so I'm going to pitch it over to Will to let him kind of give a quick summary of how everything is going with our strategic plan survey.
Okay. I'm not sure if I'm able to share my screen or not, but I will try that in a moment. So I think last time you guys got a preview of the survey itself, if I'm not mistaken. And it's been host has disabled participant screen sharing.
Jody, I think you have to let him do that.
If it's possible.
Try again, Will, and see if it'll work now.
Okay. Nope.
The host has to do it.
No, it says that you can. So.
Oh, there we go. All right. So it was broken down into a number of different parts, and I'll try to make this quick, but there were, excuse me, I took the data, downloaded it yesterday, and ran my syntax on it so I could put it into numbers that made more sense than what was being spit out by Qualtrics. But just to give you a sense of kind of where things are at, I'm not sure how comfortable you all are with looking at tables of data like this. But for the most part, in a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being excellent, the higher the average number, the better, the lower, the worse. And in terms of quality of life in Platteville, visiting and retire were on the lower end. And for raising kids and your quality of life in your local neighborhood were on the upper end. And you can see that a lot of people were very pleased with their local neighborhood, whereas rather middling for a place to visit. And place to work and place to visit were the only ones that got terrible. I have in this particular data, I did screen out people who opened it but did not respond. There's a number of those that get recorded as well. And you'll notice that not everyone responds to everything, so the number of people can be different, but roughly we had about 230 in general here. And 100 being the best, we had an 81 on safety, 85 on ease of travel, 84 on nature. Health and wellness was a 76, which was lower. Education was high again. The lowest was enrichment and reputation, which kind of gives you a sense of where people are at. You can also see these numbers in this column let you know how varied people's opinions were. So there's a wider variation on opinions for these three than there was for safety. I'm to make it a little quicker here, but for opportunities, shopping was definitely near the bottom. Probably not a surprise to anybody. And K through 12 education was the highest, right next to adult education. I have also noticed that green space type measures were fairly high as well. Downtown was fairly low. That's something that came up in the written comments quite a bit. In terms of satisfaction with services, 5 being extremely satisfied, 1 being extremely dissatisfied. You can see there's a fairly wide array here as well, but the lowest was code enforcement and the highest was the library. Recreation, I only point out as middle because that one came up a lot in the written comments. Fire, safety, police, EMS, trash got super accolades. I think this was also right after the derecho, so. And to let you know, so I'll keep collecting these. This is still open to people who want to do it. I have not done some of the more fine detailed analyses. I can break it down, for example, by gender, by race, by how long you lived here, whether you rent or own, stuff like that. I can break down numbers for council members if you want with that's one line of syntax. That one's easy for me. For our racial identification, I'm going to take this 2% and put those back up here. So we got about 75% saying that they're white, 2% black. And you notice there's a fair number missing here as well, but the vast majority of our respondents were white, which is representative of Platteville itself, and only 0.5% identified as Hispanic. For the other category, oh, it logged me out. There were things like American and race should not be asked as their racial identifications. So thankfully no one was extremely rude. And same with the gender, there was this should not be a question, but we got about 2/3 men.
Interesting.
Yes. Yeah, please interject if you have questions. Given the time, I'm going a little fast. The majority of our respondents have lived here over 20 years, so 42% of them. And if you combine that with 11 to 20 years, it's, the vast majority. For anyone who is here 10 or fewer years, I asked, well, where was home for you? And it was a wide variety of responses. A lot of Wisconsin, but there was some Ohio, Alabama, North Carolina. I was military. Some person says, I say my hometown when I'm asked my hometown. So we actually have quite a range of backgrounds here. Most of the people that responded live in Platteville, but about 15% do not. For the people who did, I don't know what our dominant is. Is it Plattvillagers, Plattvillites, Plattvillians?
Plattvillians.
Plattvillians? Okay, I thought Plattvillagers sounded pretty good, but I'll change that. The majority of people that responded own their home. So if they said they're in Platteville, they own their home. 15% rent, 16%. Some people are rent-free and one person was other. So we broke some of this down. I know some of the feedback on the survey was why go this detailed. Depending on what you're looking at, these can be, I think Joe could probably attest to, the multifamily versus single family homes can mean something fairly different depending on the community. But the vast majority of people responding were also single homeowners, like one unit on a lot kind of thing. So we might not be getting some of our folks at the villas, for example, being represented very well here. People had a tough time answering this, but most people lived with a spouse or alone and their own children. For those who owned property but didn't live here, it was mostly business. Some people owned houses that they rented out, and those people tended to be in the area. So folks who own property in this town but don't live here tended almost entirely to be all from around here, except for a person who is from single family home. So I don't know why they put that. I'm only showing you this in some detail just so you can know what I can break it down by. I asked if they're employed full-time or part-time, if they're unemployed but looking, or just not working, or retired. Where do they work? Do they work at home? Do they work in town but not at home, somewhere in the state, etc. And most people, when they said they didn't, that there were other, were basically working all over or at home, it seems. And perhaps more interesting to you all, most people wanted Facebook, so you were allowed to choose what method of updates you wanted. Newspaper was also, I see Steve is here, so newspaper was a place, emails. Text message was definitely not preferred, Twitter was not preferred, but it seems like everyone wants it from every different angle. And I did start going through, and maybe I can do this real quick. Qualtrics. I did start going through some of the text items. Actually, no, I can just use this here. The short-term 6-month plan, the 2-year plan, and then the Magic Wand plan. I haven't gone through all of them yet, but I started, you can see my picture, I started marking off who said what. Some really big notes that came out for me were more restaurants, parks and recreation, especially for children, and the word splash pad was mentioned like 10 times. There were a lot of people who wanted a new fire department built, and one person who really did not. Better housing opportunities, the rec youth center came up a lot, diversity came up, and better business. Hy-Vee came up like 4 times. So someone wants a brewery, and I have to agree with them on that one. I'm just gonna put that out there. And one thing I saw a couple times was a post-COVID celebration, which I thought was kind of interesting. So some sort of community event that once we can, we should. There were themes, but you know, tourism came up, the green spaces came up quite a bit. The streets, Adam, you told me this from the beginning, street repair and sidewalk repair were mentioned repeatedly. But I would say shopping, restaurants were kind of the two, and the rec center type stuff were really big. Some people had very detailed suggestions. Museum was mentioned 5 times. Other people had just kind of a general, like, I want a Target kind of thing. And so I will provide all of the actual data to you if you wish to see, so you can see the output's fairly nice here. Road maintenance and splash pad, that was a fairly common thing. But some people really kind of, this one was one that kind of caught my attention as something, speaking of the inclusivity, the perception that low-income folks are taking advantage of the community. And I was a little surprised to see that, but I'm sure that person's not alone. ATVs came up. I know none of you will touch that with a 10-foot pole. And art, museums kind of stuff, culture stuff came up a lot. This idea of making us kind of, you know, we got Mineral Point, we got Galena, why don't we join in kind of thing and make the Driftless region part of that. So anyways, that's the gist of it. I would say for the most part, there were some themes starting to really emerge, and some of them were fairly actionable. A senior center came up, and taxes came up repeatedly too. The fair share of tax thing I saw like 4 or 5 times. That did catch my attention. This idea that Walmart's not paying their fair share, and I have no idea about that. Questions?
We're gonna get a final document when?
Whenever you would like. This can run as long as you want. We're still, I would not cut it off yet. I would at least give it 1 more week. We're still receiving decent inflow of responses. A few of those are simply timed out partial responses. But if there was another Facebook post blast or 2 or something, we had 264 responses so far, and it's been open since not that long ago. Week and a half.
In what form will we get the information?
Either in here, I can type up something for you, or I can type it up for Adam, and Adam can polish it a little nicer for you. Or someone who works for him can do that. However you would like, I'm happy to. And again, I'm happy to, if one of you wants to know something about, say, age or what have you, I'm happy to answer those kind of questions as well.
Will this be
Will, would you, oh, sorry.
will this be in a hard copy or a computer?
I can do both.
Okay,
I get free printing at school, so I can do both.
good.
There we go.
think the-
Okay, well, that's very interesting information. Thank you. And Adam, are we back to you?
Yeah, so pretty much the intention is, as kind of Will indicated, our next kind of game plan was September 8th. We have a work session kind of scheduled for strategic plan feedback. So that's where I thought we would have kind of give Will the opportunity to, we'd leave it open till about the 8th and then do one more round of this. And essentially now what we're at is, as what you heard from Will, I think kind of bodes well into what I put together for everybody on Thursday, which was we had our session basically on the 18th, which was for staff and for council members to kind of come up with ideas. And what I put together for you is we essentially kind of had three, as Will kind of indicated, themes that I saw that came out of that session. And the three, what I'm calling are kind of community value success factors, were safe, welcoming, and engaged community. And out of that section, there were four kind of initiatives. A new and updated fire station, as Will kind of alluded to, telling a better story of Platteville. So marketing, kind of finding out ways to tell our story, creating an inclusivity diversity committee, and then four, an increased focus on promoting Platteville history and historical preservation. So what you saw is I kind of put together a chart that has all four of those items listed and then focuses on what can we do in 2021, what can we do in 2022, and what can we do in 2023. And I started in each of these kind of tabs, I gave you a freebie and kind of put in there, what's one thing that we could try to achieve. I think what I'd like to do, or kind of what I would like us to focus on, is going into the next meeting on September 8th, really kind of focus in on each of these three categories and think about ideas and kind of, as Will put, what action steps can we put in place for 2021, 2022, and 2023. So that's going to be kind of the focus, I think, of staff and of the council into the next meeting, is to start thinking and doing homework about, we have these initiatives now that we've kind of seen. We've heard Will's feedback, and I think a lot of the items we have, we kind of thought the same thing. So now it's looking at kind of diving further into, okay, what would we consider to be action steps we would like to see achieved over the next 3 years for these items. Yeah.
We're still seeing Will's screen.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
You can stop sharing.
There we go.
There we go.
Sorry about that.
It's okay, no problem.
So then obviously the second kind of theme that came out was thoughtful development and prosperous economy. So the three kind of big themes, again, was mostly economic development and tax related, as Will kind of brought up. So the ones that received kind of the most votes was looking at recruiting a new business every year. That would be about 50 to 75 jobs, increasing the quality of housing, as Will alluded to, and then continuing to grow the tax base and being fiscally responsible. So going into our next meeting, think about those three items and think about, what could be done in 2021, 22, and 23 for those three items. And then the last kind of category that was put together was quality infrastructure, amenities, and services. So the five big themes that kind of came out of this section was a community center for seniors and youth, improved broadband services, museum upgrades, expanding a city camera system, and creating a city building and grounds department. So those are all the ones that kind of received the most votes. So I think the goal here is to continue to kind of honing in on these themes that we as staff and as council members kind of came up with, but then continue to look at the survey that Will is kind of working on and ensuring that everything is kind of blending together. I think what you heard with the brief comments that we've received from Will, we're on the right track with a lot of these ideas that we have in place. I think now it's just trying to hone in on, okay, what do we want to consider as, what are we going to hold ourselves as a city and as staff and as council accountable for in the next 3 years to try to chip away at some of these initiatives.
So Adam, are you suggesting that for September 8th, we might, as individuals, fill in some of these blanks in 2021, 22, and 23?
Yes.
Okay.
Well,
So we would hope then that people would have thought about this and thought, I put this down, this is what I had in mind, or this is what I could see happening this year. This is what I think that could lead to next year and then beyond.
yeah, and if you want to kind of send those to me ahead of time, I can obviously keep tabs. That's kind of my thought process with it. And Will, you got your hand raised.
Yeah, sorry, school.
No,
Just as a last thing to state to the council, if there are any other further kind of inquiries you're interested in, or you want to kind of see some of the data yourself, you're more than welcome to. The other thing though is I just want to say these are the people who are engaged enough to respond to this. And I don't think they're necessarily, this is not a representative sample by any mean. This is the people who care enough to sit and take a 20-minute survey. At the same time, they're also the ones who are going to probably be emailing you all individually about these things. So just wanted to put that little data disclaimer in there before I leave.
Good catch.
Hey, Will, would you be able to provide a breakdown based on demographics and responses? Like, can you separate out some of that data?
Yes, I can do that.
Okay.
Especially for the September 8th meeting, I'd be able to, say men, age, whatever kind of thing you want.
Awesome. Yeah, that would be great.
Okay.
I think I'm asking the same thing. I want a list of what you're talking about.
Okay. Yeah, I can
don't
provide
write
you
that-
the.
I don't write that fast. My memory doesn't go that well either.
Okay, I will definitely provide a kind of what questions are related to what.
Yes.
I'm curious if there was an intentional decision about not asking income levels, or
Yes, there was. In terms of survey methods, income is, you can ask them about their past sex practices. People will answer that more frequently than they will income. Seriously, it's one of the one, and people will sometimes, what we call in the gaming community, rage quit. If they see that question, they'll just X out. It's one of the most sensitive ones in the American populace for whatever reason.
well, it's what I'm curious about.
Yep. I would refer to the American Community Survey or something from the census. That would probably be a better metric than anything we could get here.
Thanks
Good
for
question.
doing all this work, Will.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, everybody understands the assignments for the next meeting. One is relative to the zoning ordinance, and two is taking a look at these, well, you have three assignments really. Two is taking a look at these 3-year, the strategic planning information and getting some ideas to Adam as to how to fill in those blanks. And 3 would be next week to review the revised inclusivity statement that Adam will be working through after tonight's input. So those are 3 assignments I could see for next week, or for September 8th. So if I've missed any, 3 seems like an awful lot, Adam. Yeah. Especially with school starting, 3 seems like an awful.
Well, this is round 1, so we have some time on the strategic plan. So don't feel that we have to finish the wheel on the 8th. We've got 2 other meetings after that to kind of go through, but it's just more thinking.
All right, well, here it is, folks, 10:15. And so I think there's only one item left on our agenda. That's item number 9. So
I move to adjourn.
Very good. I hear a motion to adjourn.
Second.
And a second, I believe that was Jason and Ken. Colette will vote.
Hart,
Yes.
Doss,
Yes.
Killian,
Yes.
Klein,
Yes.
Nichols,
Yes.
Cobb,
Yes.
motion carries.
Hey, guys, have a great evening. And I guess it's bedtime.